Tonight on CFTK-TV News, a farewell was held for a departing local MLA. A former BC United MLA has backtracked on her retirement decision, and many BC mayors and councillors are in Vancouver for a yearly meetup.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making news in the Northwest and beyond. The flags at Terrace City Hall were lowered to half-mast today to commemorate the passing of Chief Don Roberts, an esteemed hereditary chief of the Kitsum-Kalem First Nation. Chief Roberts was described by his nation in a statement as an invaluable leader who made significant contributions to treaty negotiations, land claims, and economic development. Roberts will be remembered as a protector of Aboriginal rights and title, a bridge builder between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, and a visionary for the Kitsum-Kalem peoples. Arrangements for the memorial are still to come. In a release from earlier today, BC Transit spoke a bit on how they launched a program known as UMO in May of this year, which is available in the Skeena Regional, Terrace Regional, and Kitimat transit systems. The program has features like a mobility app, improved fare products, as well as reloadable cards, but the main purpose of the release was to announce some changes. Starting on December 1st, there will be changes in the prices of fare products as the program gets ready to move into the next phase of what was called the Electronic Fare Collection System project. Some of the price changes will include adult fares being $2, 30-day passes for adults costing $44, and 30-day concession passes will end up being $33, with all the other changes being listed on BC Transit's website. It was time to say goodbye to our current MLA, Ellis Ross, this past weekend after serving 2 terms as Skeena's MLA. CFTK's Jaylene Matthews has more from the ceremony.
MLA Ellis Ross said a heartfelt goodbye to his constituents this past weekend at a banquet to celebrate his 2 terms in office.
But I've decided it's time to move on to the federal ridings and see if I can become an MP. It was actually the federal nomination that was actually got me into politics in the first place in 2017, but the provincial election came first. And I'm glad it did.
Make this presentation tonight.
Former MP for Skeena Mike Scott awarded Ross the King Charles III Coronation Medal, which recognizes those who have made a significant contribution to Canada and their home province.
The medal will be awarded to 30,000 deserving individuals across the country and is the first Canadian honor to mark a coronation. On behalf of His Majesty King Charles III, King of Canada, and all British Columbians whom you so graciously serve, please accept my sincere congratulations on having been chosen for this richly deserved honor. Wow. So Ellis?
Ross says that although he feels he wasn't able to get as much done as he'd have liked due to his party not having the majority, he says he's proud to have spoken up for Skeena.
And I was going to bring government back and say, you got to support all this. Didn't work out. Sorry to say. But I did my best to kind of get the government to understand that we exist up here. You can't ignore us. We do need that hospital in Terrace. We do need our highways paved. We do need a new bridge in Kitimat. We do need this. And so everything I've done is based on the idea that I really love Skeena. I really love BC. And I really feel fortunate and privileged to be living in Canada.
For CFTK News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
An earthquake hit yet again off the North BC coast at a magnitude of 4.3, only a day after several other quakes struck the region during the weekend. Natural Resources Canada said in a statement that the latest quake struck in the waters south of Haida, some 200 kilometers west of Bella Bella. The agency next said that no damage or tsunami was to be expected. Back on Sunday, the region was struck by 4 quakes in nearby areas, with the largest being at a magnitude of 6.5. Coming up next, lots of BC mayors think drug addiction and mental health needs to be handled differently. Welcome back. Now over to an urgent call to tackle crime on our streets. Mayors from across the province say that the system is broken, cities are not safe, and it's time to deal with severe drug addiction and mental health in a new way. And as St. John Alexander reports, there are more calls to reopen Riverview.
Flanked by so many politicians, police, firefighters, doctors, First Nations chiefs, even a former White House staffer, a handler was needed to squeeze them all in. This was a show of solidarity.
We are at a breaking point. This is the worst drug crisis in our history, and it's time we move on from old rhetoric emphasizing so-called safe ways to use drugs.
Pointing to people being attacked at random, sometimes by complete strangers. Vandalism, theft, not just in Vancouver, but throughout the province. These city leaders argue the way we've been dealing with severe drug addiction and mental illness isn't working.
To the point where they are dangerous. They're a risk to the general public, and they can't be wandering the streets of Vancouver or the Lower Mainland or Vancouver Island or Prince George or Kelowna.
They are calling for mandatory care and want money from the federal government to pay for it.
And when people talk about reopening Riverview, I agree with that. I don't believe in opening it back, in the same format it was, decades and decades ago, which was sort of probably old school mental health care.
Instead, he points to a more modern and compassionate program like what's being offered at the Redfish Healing Center. They estimate several hundred extra spaces are needed, maybe 1,000, and now.
I can tell you, every dollar invested in this will save a multiple of dollars on the back end.
The group also wants bail reform so repeat offenders are kept off streets and tighter control at ports to keep dangerous drugs out. For its part, Ottawa says it has tightened laws, and now it's up to the province to step up enforcement.
We absolutely should meet people where they're at, but we should not leave them where they're at.
Mandatory care is not without controversy, but they argue not helping the most vulnerable isn't compassionate or safe. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Those requests come on the heels of the Premier's push towards involuntary care, announcing a new care facility for people with addiction and mental health issues, and it's getting blowback from both sides. Political opponents accuse David Eby of doing an about-face, while others claim there's a lack of evidence and worry it will only cause more harm. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi explains this time.
This is one of the sites for a dedicated mental health unit on the grounds of the Alouette Correctional Center in Maple Ridge. Its purpose? Involuntary care for people with addiction and mental health issues.
That we cannot wait. This is a group of people that need intensive interventionist support. They are not able to ask for help for themselves.
The Premier says the move is in response to overlapping issues: mental illness, brain injuries, and addiction. Instead of being released into the community, people can now be moved into these facilities without their consent.
They will not benefit from voluntary treatment.
Critics believe otherwise, pointing to a lack of evidence, particularly for those who use substances.
Forced treatment, it just doesn't have the promise that we hope that it does, and it sets it up for so much risk for overdose, for severing connections, and it's not going to get us where we need to go.
A Vancouver writer who was treated for substance use on her own terms agrees.
There are times, absolutely, where interventions are required. The mandatory care that they're talking about is, I don't think is not going to work and is very problematic in terms of civil liberties.
The BCCLA was pretty concerned about this announcement. We think it's infringing on people's rights in a way that's not acceptable.
Eby's announcement drew accusations from his opponents. The leader of BC's Conservatives saying, quote, "This kind of flip-flopping only demonstrates a lack of leadership and vision. Those who question the policy say greater investments in housing would be a better alternative."
Safe and secure housing was pivotal to my recovery.
There's no timeline on when these mental health facilities will be up and running, but the Premier says the plan is to move forward as quickly as possible. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
She planned to retire, but now a former BC United MLA has returned to run in October's election independently. Corinne Kirkpatrick has been critical of Kevin Falcon's decision to suspend the party's campaign, and she joins a growing list of former United members going it alone. CTV's Rob Buffum has more details.
Corinne Kirkpatrick, the BC United MLA for West Vancouver Capilano, became the 6th current MLA now running as an independent in the upcoming election.
With this campaign and the campaign of independence around the province, we will have the opportunity to make history.
Kirkpatrick hadn't planned on running, but with the collapse of her party last month, she's changed her mind and is joining 4 other BC United MLAs, Mike Bernier, Dan Davies, Tom Shapitka, and Coralie Oakes as independents.
Never seen a political leader throw in the towel just weeks before an election was about to be called. So we are in a totally unprecedented situation.
Together with Adam Walker, already sitting as an independent after getting kicked out of the NDP, the half-dozen incumbents running as independents not only makes history, it's rare that any independent gets elected. Vicky Huntington in Delta South from 2009 through 2017 is the only one in the past 75 years.
You don't have a party banner behind you. Tough to get attention in the media running as an independent.
But with strong name recognition as incumbents, and in some cases multiple terms elected, and a record as a cabinet minister, they just might defy the odds.
A lot of positive chatter out there by people who are saying, we don't like seeing all of this polarizing politics, and it's great to see that there's a choice now on the ballot in many of these ridings.
And with a potentially tight race, independents like Kirkpatrick say they could hold extra power after the election if there is a minority government.
And there is the very real possibility that a small handful of independents could hold the balance of power in the next legislative session.
Even Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau is appealing to voters to consider independence in those ridings they legitimately can win to prevent a majority government.
In a riding where you have an independent who can be elected, I strongly encourage people, elect that independent MLA.
Advice voters may take to heart this time around more than usual.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast will be partly cloudy while the low sits at 9 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area should see a chance of showers plus a low at 10 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should also see a chance of showers, but with a low at 2 degrees. On the north coast, the next week or so shall see essentially all rain and clouds while the high bounces between 14 and 13 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will end up having possibly a little more sun, but still mostly clouds and rain while the high shifts from 16 to 13 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week will get a pair of sunny days sandwiched around rainy and cloudy days as their high moves from 18 to 13 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is a special travel advisory, bridge maintenance, utility work, construction work, paving operations, a material spill, and the Usk Ferry is out of service due to the low river level. On Highway 37 has some maintenance and roadside brushing. 37A has road maintenance work, and there is some construction work on the Nishka Highway. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, another suspected gunman who allegedly shot at Donald Trump has been charged. Welcome back. Most of BC's mayors and councillors descended on the Vancouver Convention Centre to put their heads together and work on tough problems while bending the ear of cabinet ministers. As CTV's Penny Daflos explains, the formal start of the provincial election campaign looms over the annual convention.
In downtown Vancouver, Canada, Place is even busier than usual as 2,000 mayors, councillors, experts and stakeholders gather for the annual Union of BC Municipalities Convention.
Getting together and debating resolutions that they've brought forward throughout the year, as well for them to connect.
Face-to-face meetings with cabinet ministers are a major focus, but with the election period formally starting in days, they take on a different meaning.
We see an election year as an opportunity to really push our key messaging, because we do have this year, as you know, we have 3 key messaging, and we're going to all parties, and we're saying, share with us, what is your plan going forward?
Delegates are formally asking for $650 million in new annual funding so their community infrastructure can keep up, as well as a share of property tax and carbon tax revenue. While healthcare and public safety are key issues on the agenda, housing affordability and availability remain the dominant issues at this year's convention once again.
It is more of a stalled market at this point.
As economists told delegates high prices have balanced the market, they had questions about what they can do to address the crisis.
What can be done policy-wise to incentivize landlords?
And heard some of the potential fixes, including upzoning, can be as long-term and complicated as what got us in this situation in the first place.
Government some decades ago did not plan adequately for the aging of our population.
There's a lot of very competing priorities in all of the things, and all they do is add additional cost, they add additional confusion.
The public is getting to the point on this where they're tired of the blame game, and they want every level of government to put aside those turf differences and cooperate to deliver.
The families of 2 women killed in a horrific crash at a West Vancouver wedding 2 years ago read victim impact statements in court. The driver responsible for the tragic crash pled guilty to a motor vehicle act offense. They shared their heartbreak and anger, but they knew it wouldn't impact the driver's sentence. CTV's Shannon Patterson has the story.
At Provincial Court in North Vancouver, Nigel Kong is preparing to come face to face with the woman responsible for his mother's death.
We haven't seen her before. I've got a lot of anxiety going into this.
67-year-old Annie Kong was killed at a wedding in West Vancouver in August 2022 when a next-door neighbor drove her Range Rover into a crowd of guests.
She was thrown 12 feet forward to the ground. I held her and she bled to death in my arms.
A second wedding guest, 62-year-old Liu Nguyen, was also killed and 7 others injured. An investigation determined the neighbor, Hong Zhu, mistakenly hit the gas instead of the brake. The Kong family came to court to hear Zhu plead guilty to 1 count of driving without due care and attention.
Feeling very anxious and honestly very overwhelmed, but also ready to hear what the judge has to say.
In his victim impact statement, Nigel Kong told the driver, who apologized and wept openly in court, that he wants her to feel the same grief and misery he does.
The weight and the burden that we carry as families is immense. It lasts multiple lifetimes. I hope she hears that.
In her statement, the bride, whose aunt was the second victim, said, "Our wedding anniversary is now a death anniversary."
We're bound by this unmeasurable loss, and to us, they're almost like family now because it's this shared experience.
In a joint submission, Crown and Defense said the lives lost and injury caused can't factor into sentencing for the Motor Vehicle Act charge.
It doesn't matter how many people she killed, it was that momentary moment that they're charging her with. Then my question is, at what point does that change? How many people have to die that charge gets changed?
The Kongs knew their victim impact statements wouldn't sway the court, that Crown and Defense are recommending Zhu receive a $2,000 fine and 5-year driving prohibition, and the judge will almost certainly impose that sentence when court reconvenes on Tuesday.
We know that we will not be getting any justice, but we have to turn up because my wife could not turn up herself. So we are here because she could not make it.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, North Vancouver.
The FBI is investigating what appeared to be a second attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. The suspected gunman, who had a lengthy criminal record, was recently charged with serious gun crimes. As CTV's Joy Malbon explains, all of this is raising concerns about security in a particularly volatile presidential election.
Driver! Walk straight back!
This is the moment police arrested the suspected gunman. 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Routh was charged with federal gun crimes, holding charges to keep him in custody while they investigate his motivation. Court documents show Routh was on Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach for 12 hours. He has prior criminal convictions involving weapons. On Sunday, a Secret Service agent spotted the barrel of an assault-style rifle peeking out of the bushes, just yards from where the former president was golfing. The agent fired, sending the suspected gunman running, leaving behind an AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks with ceramic tiles for a bulletproof vest, and a GoPro.
The Secret Service are laser focused on today. Is this guy part of a conspiracy? Is he a lone gunman? If he's a lone gunman, President Trump is that much safer because we have him. But if he's part of a conspiracy, then this whole thing really takes on a very ominous tone.
2 years ago, Routh, who once supported Trump, became vocal about the war in Ukraine, wanting to join the fight.
We are sitting on the fence as far as whether good or evil is going to win.
After the last attempt on Trump's life where a bullet grazed his ear, Trump called for political unity. Now he's blaming Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for the apparent assassination attempt, posting, "Because of this communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying and it will only get worse." Both Harris and the president condemned the violence, directing Congress to respond to these heightened threats.
I think the Congress should respond to their needs if they in fact need more services.
Prosecutors want Routh to remain behind bars, calling him a flight risk and a danger. He will be back in court Monday and could face additional charges. Joy Malvin, CTV News, Washington.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 0.02 of a cent. The price of gold is down $16.50. Oil is up 94 cents. Natural gas is down 5 cents. Aluminum is up $57.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 4.37 points. The Venture Index is up 0.30. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 15.90 and NASDAQ is up 35.93. Still ahead, some signs have emerged that may hint at some potential royal reunions. Welcome back. Prince Harry celebrated a milestone birthday, and his brother Prince William marked his 40th birthday with a social media shout-out. Now, many hope this signals a possible thaw in the icy relationship between Harry, his brother, and father. ABC's Lama Hassan reports.
The royal family wishing Prince Harry well for his 40th birthday this weekend. Differences put aside for the milestone, there was even a mention of the big day from his estranged brother, Prince William's social media account.
This is significant. It's the first time that the royal family has acknowledged Harry's birthday on social media in 3 years. This is a milestone birthday, but it's still being looked at as a sign that relations are improving.
Relations between Prince Harry and his family have been fraught since he and his wife Meghan dramatically left the royal fold back in 2020. The pair publicly critical of the royal way of life. Harry particularly so in his memoir Spare, calling Prince William his beloved brother and arch nemesis. The prince telling Michael Strahan at the time,
"I have thought about it long and hard, and as far as I see it, the divide couldn't be greater before this book."
Harry's relationship with his father still troubled. The pair seeing each other briefly after Harry flew to the UK following news of the King's cancer diagnosis.
We know that Harry has been in touch with his father, but when it comes to William, there's still a lot of hostility there. And I think it's going to be much harder for Harry to build those bridges with his brother than with his father.
That's all our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Kale Maslin. Thanks for watching.